The Long Decline, PNM Governance, and the Erosion of State Capacity, 1956 to 2025, an editorial by Curtis Anthony O'Brady. The People's National Movement, PNM, occupies a unique place in the political history of Trinidad and Tobago. Founded in 1956, the party led the country to independence and governed for most of the post-colonial era. Its longevity, however, has often been mistaken for effectiveness. A closer examination of governance outcomes between 1956 and 2025 reveals a consistent pattern: early institutional success followed by long-term administrative stagnation, economic mismanagement, and declining public trust. This is not an argument about ideology or race, nor is it a critique rooted in electoral rivalry. It is an assessment of performance, institutional outcomes, and historical patterns. Political parties, like governments, must be judged by results. By that standard, the PNM record shows a steady erosion of state capacity over time. 1. The foundational years: promise and centralization, 1956 to 1981. Under Dr. Eric Williams, the PNM established the foundations of the modern state. Independence in 1962, Republican status in 1976, expansion of secondary and tertiary education, and the development of public institutions remain central achievements. Williams was an intellectual heavyweight, and his leadership gave the young nation international credibility. Yet, even during this formative period, structural weaknesses emerged. Governance became highly centralized. Decision-making flowed upward, not outward. Party loyalty increasingly mattered more than institutional autonomy. The line between party and state blurred, weakening accountability mechanisms that should have matured alongside independence. The oil boom of the 1970s concealed these weaknesses. High revenues allowed inefficiencies to persist without immediate consequence. Economic diversification was discussed, but not seriously pursued. The 1970 Black Power uprising exposed social discontent and democratic fatigue, signaling that political legitimacy could no longer rely on historical symbolism alone. When Williams died in office in 1981, the PNM inherited power without a renewal strategy. 2. Post-Williams drift and electoral rejection, 1981 to 1986. The post-Williams leadership lacked ideological clarity and administrative discipline. Economic conditions worsened as energy prices declined, and the state proved ill-prepared to manage contraction. Fiscal imbalances grew. Public confidence fell. The 1986 general election was decisive. The PNM was reduced to 3 seats, one of the most dramatic electoral defeats in Caribbean political history. This was not a temporary swing, but a public judgment on governance failure, economic mismanagement, and political complacency. The lesson, however, was not internalized. 3. Adjustment without protection, 1991 to 1995. The PNM returned to office in 1991 amid economic crisis. The response centered on structural adjustment, austerity, privatization, wage restraint, and reduced social spending. While macroeconomic stabilization was necessary, the approach lacked adequate social buffering. Unemployment increased. Inequality widened. Crime escalated. The government framed hardship as unavoidable, but failed to communicate a long-term development vision beyond fiscal repair. Economic policy became technically competent, but socially detached. The electorate responded accordingly. By 1995, the PNM lost office again, having restored fiscal order, but eroded social cohesion. 4. The Manning years: revenue without resilience, 2001 to 2010. High global energy prices during the early 2000s gave the PNM another opportunity to reset the development model. Instead, the period became defined by large-scale infrastructure projects, rapid public spending, and centralized executive authority. Economic growth occurred, but it was shallow. Manufacturing stagnated. Innovation remained limited. Oversight institutions weakened. Public procurement became increasingly opaque. Despite record revenues, long-term savings and diversification remained inadequate. Social indicators told a different story than GDP figures. Crime rose sharply. Public trust declined. The state appeared expansive, but brittle. By 2010, voters again removed the PNM, citing governance fatigue and declining institutional credibility. 5. The final decade, administrative regression, 2015 to 2025. The PNM's final governing period represented not renewal but regression. Energy revenues declined, yet the economic response lacked creativity or urgency. Youth unemployment increased. Public services deteriorated. Crime reached unprecedented levels, prompting repeated states of emergency that address symptoms rather than causes. Independent assessments repeatedly highlighted weak planning, poor implementation, and declining public sector morale. Rather than reform institutions, the government centralized authority further. Responsibility was routinely deflected to global conditions, previous administrations, or unnamed actors. Most damaging was the erosion of accountability. Failure carried few internal consequences. Performance evaluation became rhetorical. Governance shifted from problem-solving to blame management. By 2025, public patience had expired. 6. Recurring patterns of failure. Across nearly 70 years, the same structural patterns reappear. Power is centralized rather than institutionalized. Longevity is confused with legitimacy. Electoral defeat is treated as misfortune, not diagnosis. Economic windfalls are consumed, not transformed. Organizations survive only if they evolve. The PNM did not. Conclusion: historical judgment. The PNM's removal from office in 2025 was not abrupt or unjust. It was cumulative. Governance failure does not occur in a single term. It accumulates through neglected reform, weakened institutions, and refusal to adapt. The party that once led national construction ultimately failed at national management. History will acknowledge the PNM's early contributions. It will also record its inability to modernize governance, diversify the economy, and maintain public trust in a changing society. Political power is conditional. When performance declines, legitimacy follows. That is the historical record.